bringing you inside the USL Championship and League One.
Segmer's got there, Marquinhos! He's been knocking on the door! He knocks it down!
Diving into all the biggest stories and top headlines.
You are ripping and roaring today.
This is USL All Access.
It's almost impossible to recreate that level of magic.
With Mike Watts and Devon Kerr on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome, everyone, to a new edition of USL All Access. A happy Tuesday night, wherever you might be, with Devon Kerr and Emmett McConnell at the controls. Mike Watts. The playoff picture is beginning to become a little more clear. Really, no one's been eliminated this past week, but plenty of teams are clinching. Also, the Players' Shield winner. Just how historic has the Louisville season been? All right, Dev. You and I are sort of going through it travel-wise, and yet this league is continued to fill our cup. Our cup runneth over. What a week.
I'm feeling much better about myself now. Recent travel has shown that I have struggled on the red-eye cross-country flights. My brain's all wound up, and I just feel like I'm always in the mode of working on a plane. Slept through my red-eye from Portland to Fort Lauderdale. Very happy about that. So I got that going for me, which is nice.
Congrats, bud. I'm overjoyed for you. You seem well-rested.
I feel pretty rested. No coffee inside of me, which is great. You've got a pretty rough one coming up. Any way that I can help you in terms of travel?
Boy, not in a way I can explain on satellite radio.
Oh, do tell. Okay. Didn't realize we were going to go there, but I'm listening.
That's a YouTube exclusive if I've ever heard of one.
Bingo.
Yeah. Dev, let's start with the history making of this deal. Louisville City has clinched the Players' Shield. Again, in past years, they hadn't really given this trophy out because it was so unbalanced from one conference to another. And how do you make that relevant? We've seen teams create trophies for it. Some admit to that, some don't. Some made a farce of it, some didn't. Pittsburgh obviously was given the real trophy last year. Louisville will receive the trophy on Saturday night after clinching against Indy on the road. They felt like it was better to do it at home. Let's start with the game itself. 2-2 comeback draw. Jake Morris, 90+4 equalizer. Augie Williams, one of the great statistical anomalies of the year for Indy. 10 goals, 5 against Miami, 5 in the last 2 games. So, but 2 against the top team in the league. Who would have thunk? Louisville, their highest XG of the season, 3.25, 32 shots most of the season. Louisville now third most. You have third most points gained from a losing position.
Correct.
Which is wild. More to come on that. Dev, there's still a long way to go here, but they've got their silverware, or at least a piece of silverware. They're 3 points away from their club record in points. Where do you sort of stack this?
The hypothetical in my mind was like, obviously postseason is important, right? For everyone, certainly for this Louisville franchise. We've talked about it before. Organization, excuse me. I was trying to run through my mind where they rank historically as the great teams that we've seen come through the USL Championship play. Now, some of them that I brought into the forefront of these lobes won a title, right? 2015, Rochester Rhinos, which until that San Antonio team of 22, and we can talk about this, to me was the greatest defensive team we've ever seen, right? Shutout after shutout. San Antonio surpassed that mark, but they had more games. 2 more or 4 more, if I'm not mistaken. Either way. Yeah. So, there's the Rochester of 15, the Orlandos of yore, less games, smaller league, certainly different quality of competition. There's the 18 team of Cincinnati, which to me is a conversation that doesn't need to happen as one of the best ever, only because the very next year we saw Phoenix destroy all of their records. Still relevant in terms of a great team. But where does Louisville rank? Top 10 all time? Right now? Like if the season ended right now and they finished as the number one, I get it. The title's important, but just in comparison to everybody else, I really only know if we can say top 10. Maybe you could make an argument for top 5. And then beyond that, like obviously, I mean, the 16 Red Bulls, like Red Bull 2, joke on both sides of the ball. Here's what I take away from it. Top 10 for sure, top 5 maybe. The most important thing that came out of the weekend, and then you can give your thoughts on where they fall and why, was the comments by Amadou Dia and then by Danny Cruz. Amadou Dia saying that this team, no matter the circumstance, has a never say die attitude. We've seen it all season long. You saw it once again in the comeback. You talked about the points gained from a losing position. It's a ton of points, number one. Number two, the other thing about that is given the fact that they're third in that conversation with 17, they trail only Vegas in the Battery. And you could look and go, wow, they gained that many points from a losing position. Well, if 6 times you put yourself in a losing position all season and you basically get 3 wins out of all 6, it's not that crazy of a stat because they just continue to win games. Danny Cruz then went on to say that he's happy for them. He wants them to celebrate, but this ain't it. It is not time to celebrate. Be happy with your work. It's an accomplishment, but we aren't done. Do not be content with what you have achieved so far. And that's because this conversation that we're having now, at the completion of this year, I'm sure that he, along with others, want to be able to have the conversation of putting another star above the crest, their third, and then where that team would rank. If in your mind right now, Mike, where do they sit?
Yeah, I think that top 5's a proper placement. I think San Antonio having won a double. I think that Red Bull team, right? Orlando winning a double. I mean, that's sort of the standard. The goal scoring thing with Phoenix, like you could sit here and say they scored more goals. They did, but the league was a lot different at the time. I should, if I were a proper professional, go back and look at goals per game against independent clubs from that season and see where they stack, because I have a distinct feeling it's beneath. But I did speak to Danny on Friday in the lead up to the game. I called the game on the local TV affiliate in Louisville. And you might think that's something Danny would say after the fact to refocus the team. Not the case. We keep hearing coaches say, you remember who hoists the last trophy, not the first one. Who wins the last game of the year. That's going to be Louisville's standard. The good news for them now, as we've known for a while, the entire postseason is going to go through them. They've won more home games in a season than anybody, but Pittsburgh did the exact same thing last year.
Yeah, look how that turned out.
Right. So they set that record.
And think about how many times, by the way, that conversation has occurred to the point of this. Phoenix in 19. Reno in 20. Cincinnati, 18. Monarchs of 17. We are talking about offensive juggernauts that ran through the league, and yet none of them won a title, right?
Yeah. I think you look at the Detroit loss, and you can understand, right? As mighty and as powerful as you are, you can have 3 XG and tie the game. You know? You can have 30 shots and tie the game. And in the playoffs, what does that mean? There was an injury to Jake Morris. Now he ends up scoring the goal, but he was calling for a sub with 10 minutes to go.
Yeah.
To the point where Chris Nurse and I calling that game said, do you just stand him up top and let him stand there? Whether it was his ankle or whatever it was, it looked like an ankle. In the playoffs, and you're out of subs, you're playing 20 minutes down a man in extra time. You don't know how that goes. So I sort of hedge on winning the final game. I get that. Danny acknowledged it from the fans, from the ownership. It's a trophy you haven't won. It's an acknowledgement of what you've done all season. I would just hesitate to say, give them credit where it's due, because trophies are infrequent. This is a really unfortunate game at times. The best team does not always win. Sometimes it's the team of destiny last year. Sometimes it's the team that falls upward, as we've seen in previous seasons, or the team that gets hot. But for Louisville to do this over this extended period of time, I have little doubt that over 32, 34, whatever games, this is the best Louisville team that's existed. Whether or not they win the playoff title remains to be seen. To me, it is the best Louisville team.
To your point, by the way, about Phoenix in 2019, 49 points against independent clubs. 49 points. And people are probably sitting here going, well, why does that matter? Well, the points record.
Right.
Because they had 78 points. So nearly 30 points. 49, 29 were against teams that were
not there to win the game.
Subpar, inferior. Their goals were different. It was about development. And a lot of players have come out of those two teams, both into the USL Championship and MLS ranks, that have gone on to do great things in the pros. Yeah, statistically, they were an anomaly. They were top-heavy with 3 players. It was John, Asante, and Junior Flemings, whereas this Louisville team, while they certainly have their top-digit goal scorers, it's primarily dominated by success throughout as opposed to within the conversation of 3 players. Yeah, it's a fun one for me. It's one that, and it's not just because it's a Louisville team, and obviously we give them praise, but it's one that just to be able to have the conversation, as we did with San Antonio after 2022, I put them in top 5 all time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to have the conversation about where this team ranks. If they win a star, where this team ranks. Because then you're starting to go, okay, well, now you can dive into the statistics. The one thing I will say about this Louisville team compared to the teams that fell short that we referenced, the 17 Monarchs, Cincinnati in 18, Phoenix in 19, Reno in 20, so on and so forth. To me, the biggest difference, Mike, is this team is getting better. They're not hanging on. All of those teams down the stretch were kind of surviving. If you remember the amount of flack that I took from the Phoenix fans in 19, because I called the RGV upset.
Yeah,
I was like, they have a problem here. They have a problem at outside back. Everybody was up in arms about it. And then they lost.
Then it happens.
Then it happens, right? So this Louisville team's getting better. It's certainly a conversation we'll continue to have as things get closer. But as far as Mike and I are concerned, and I'm speaking for Mike because I know where his head sits, got to go win a title for this conversation to happen again. Other than that, it's fun to have it now. But now that we've had it, we have to move on because the body of work has to speak for itself.
Yep. USL All Access, Sirius XM FC. Dev, let's chat about the Charleston Battery locking up their playoff spot. They had to earn it. Finished at 2-2 draw against Detroit at home. Laurent Kessiadou scores 90+3 to equalize his first goal of the season since returning from the Czech Republic. It played for, obviously, Ben Pierman in Memphis. Detroit now 6 unbeaten. It's their longest run of the last 2 seasons. Detroit has actually lost 19 points from a winning position. But interestingly enough, Devin, there they are in third, right? San Antonio's dropped 20 out of the playoffs. Miami's dropped 22. I can't believe they led enough to drop 22 points. Dead last. Look, if you're Detroit, it's a blessing and a curse, right? You know, you're that close to being elite, and yet I think a lot of that you could argue is lack of depth and the price that you pay for a slim roster.
It's pretty incredible, by the way, that Louisville are still 19 points ahead and the Charleston Battery are still 11 points ahead.
True enough. We'll chat about where the Batteries sit in this in a moment.
Yeah, very well done by Detroit at the end of this. Mike, pen or no pen?
I called it. It was outside the penalty area, so it's irrelevant to me.
Agreed. Thank you very much. I just saw all the chatter, and obviously we got tagged. And while I'm grateful for the support and certainly for people acknowledging our opinion and that it means something to them, I was in the middle of a game when that was going on, so I couldn't respond real time. You guys all handled it for me. And while I don't agree with all of the snide comments from the Detroit fans, I do think that they did a good job of just saying, hey, listen, like, number one, it was outside the box, right? So it doesn't matter any further than that. I'm trying to figure out what Detroit needs to do to change to be a playoff team that can make a run. That's where my head's at with Detroit right now. And the reason I say that is they deserve the praise for being in a top 3 because they're handling their business. I would also say that to me, a lot of that also includes a lot of teams around them. You know what, the bed. The Rowdies. Rhode Island had that rough stretch. Indy for sure. Birmingham. Like, Detroit's handled their business. I give them credit for that. But when I watch them play, when I've called their games, I don't come out of the games going, that's a team they're gonna do something. I felt more confident about the Detroit team last year at this time of year that beat that Pittsburgh team, the 8-1 matchup, right? Is that the 8-1? Yes. I felt more confident about that Detroit team than I do about this team sitting in third. And to me, it comes down to just ruthlessness and the ability to control a game, which that team had the ability last year. More physical, knocked you off of your game, more direct. I like the direction that they're going. I just feel like they fade in and out of games too much, and that concerns me for them. They're going to get a home playoff game, and that's a big benefit for them, at least given where we're in the standings right now. They're only 3 points ahead, and I get that, but right now they would sit in that coveted spot. That's going to help them. I think the crowd for them and being at home is the biggest asset that they have available to them right now. But every single level, I'm still not convinced of the goalkeeping spot. The back line's a little bit shaky. They're trying to inject some life into the midfield, and the front line just isn't aggressive enough.
If Ben Morris got on a heater, does that change your opinion?
No, because we saw it already from him.
Okay.
Super versatile, and think that he again, again, we talked about Louisville at the end of the year and having that conversation and maybe one of the greatest ever. I can't wait to see what this team looks like in year 2 under Danny Dicchio.
Yeah.
I think they're going to have an incredible offseason, and he's going to get more players to tweak what that identity is to fit his mold better. I think attacking-wise, they're going to be much more suited to go in and control some of these games. To me, there's kind of different levels of identities within this squad, and they're just struggling with that.
They will have as incredible an offseason as ownership allows them to have.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 100%.
Dev, couple anomalies here about these last 2 games that we've mentioned, because these are the only 2 in the East that we're going to mention here at the outset. If you're the Battery, you just entered the abyss. You are too far from the 1 and too far from the 3. You literally have nothing to gain or lose at all the rest of the way. You will be the higher performing 2 seed, regardless of what happens in the West. Seeding's going to determine playoff home games for the final. You're done. So it's get healthy and get in form. That means get Malloy healthy. That means get this team clicking. That's all that's left. Indy, on the other hand, they set the tone. They're 5 up on Loudoun at the bottom. They are 5 points off Detroit for third. At Loudoun, at Detroit, host Birmingham, at Tampa Bay. 3, 4, 7, 8. That's who you finish with. So do you want to be ascendant or descendant? It's on you. That's the fun part of Indy's schedule. I don't know that they can catch either team in front of them. I'm just saying it's in your hands. Fair?
I mean, I hope they're. Yeah, I'm with you. I think you're spot on. I hope they're turning a corner when it comes to Indy 11. I've maintained all season long that I still believe that's a top 4 team at their best.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to the body of work that we've seen out of everybody this year, and certainly when it comes to the relativity of this conversation, obviously get rid of Louisville and Charleston. You know, Detroit, Tampa, Rhode Island, Indy, Birmingham, and Loudoun. Sure, we'll just talk about playoff teams right there on the bubble. What a mess that is. Not the West, not a pillow fight, not practice, but a mess. And we'll get there in a minute. We got some words for you in the Western Conference. The level that I've seen out of Indy at its best, like to me, the top 4 are Louisville, Charleston, Tampa, Indy in terms of quality of play and level.
Yep.
Obviously, the points dictate a different conversation, but that will make or break them. They will either hit postseason, and it is to me, probably the biggest underdog hitting postseason play, or they're going to stumble in and they're going to get knocked out round one. I think Charleston's a very interesting conversation too. I was thinking about this, and I think you and I discussed it prior to the SAC game. I can't remember. No, it's prior to the Louisville, the 3-1 game. And I said that I was concerned for them. I'm a little bit more concerned now. It's smash the Rowdies. The Rowdies are going through it right now. But coming off that 2-0 against Colorado Springs, I didn't like the way that they looked. And now it's the inability to close that game out. At Pittsburgh, hosting Rhode Island, hosting Loudoun. That's an interesting one too. And the reason I say it isn't just because of where they all sit. Pitt in 9th, Rhode Island in 5th, Loudoun in 8th, who are fighting for their own, their top 4, their playoff lives, etc. It's also teams, specifically 2 of them in Rhode Island and Pitt, that are so disruptive in nature to your own rhythm that could really cause a concern. I'm less concerned about them getting points as opposed to your point of stylistically really starting to sharpen their edges as they hit postseason.
It's why Ohio State shouldn't be playing Navy in the middle of the season.
By the way, did you know the only team in the FBS, and I can't wait to hear your comment after this, the only team in the FBS in the past 4 years to start 5-0 is Penn State? It means absolutely nothing. I'm a Penn State fan for people at home. It means absolutely nothing because we can't win a big game. However, I thought that was an interesting stat, given like the Bamas and the Georgias and the Clemsons. Are you surprised by that? Even Ohio State?
I do not care, even a little bit, because then comes
if I made that
6.
comment about Ohio State, would you care?
Because usually they're 9-0, not 5-0.
You just made my point, though. They haven't been 9-0. They haven't even been 5-0 in the past 4 years. That's what I'm saying.
They've been, hold on, all 5 years?
4 years. The only team in FBS over the last 4 seasons, this year included, 24,
right.
23, 22,
years.
21. The only team to go 5-0 every year is Penn State. I was shocked by that.
Right, and whoop-de-doo, because they will never get to 9-0.
Agreed.
Right.
But neither did Ohio State. That's my point.
Not all 4 years, but they don't have to. Do you want to win a championship, or do you want to be the best in October? Yes!
You guys haven't.
All right. Dev, before we go to break,
what is this show about again?
Yeah, let's get serious, because regrettably, this show is not just about soccer this week. There's a meteorological tint to this.
Yes.
Let's chat about the Rowdies for a moment. We're running long here. Hurricane Helene came through. I think it's been abundantly clear St. Pete took enormous damage. And I don't have exact understanding of how Al Lang Stadium is doing, but to say that it is directly on the bay should tell you everything you need to know. They postponed their game against Hartford. That game has not been rescheduled yet. Hurricane Milton obviously is coming. I'm not going to feign to do the weather here, but let's look at the Rowdies for a moment. 4 games left. They're going to go to Louisville on Saturday. 3 games left over 14 days. They're all scheduled to be at home. They have not rescheduled the Hartford game yet. Based on past experience, typically they wait to see if that game's going to be relevant when there's been need to reschedule games this late in the season to the standings before dictating whether or not a game like that is replayed. We saw in COVID a game played on the Wednesday leading into the playoffs because it had impact on seeding and who made the postseason. The Rowdies will not be worried about that per se. Hartford will be. So unclear how that plays. Can they play at home? Let's not forget, Stu Sternberg owns the Rays as well. The Rays are out of the postseason. That's a domed venue. Would that be available? Is Al Lang going to be playable? The Super League team had their scoreboard fall onto the field, so I don't know whether or not they're capable of potentially opening their doors if Al Lang is in some measure of trouble. But long story short, Devin, all of our friends at USL headquarters are based there. Obviously, the Rowdies. You and I know people in Orlando very well, and this thing could track right down I-4. You live in Florida. our thoughts with everybody there, because the soccer matches that they're relevant to this show, they're
Yeah.
relevant to the next 48 to 72 hours. They're completely effing irrelevant.
Yeah, the most important thing is are the people, right? And just making sure that everybody is safe. Certainly wore this for all of our friends on the West Coast. I am on the East side, and so I will be in the storm. In theory, I'm getting less of it, but that is, you start to listen to the news and what's going on and what could be on the West Coast. I don't want to get into all the games and stuff. I think it's a lot of speculation on our end. I agree with you. Yeah, the relationship with the Rays is certainly going to benefit them in one way, shape, or form, whether that's at a local venue or not. It's going to displace them for sure. But we just want them to stay safe, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. This is just a game. This is just a show about USL Championship. And while we enjoy it, the most important thing is that people be aware of their surroundings, the impending storm, and to just make sure that they're taking care of themselves and their families. Stay positive and safe, everybody.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk Western Conference, then Eastern Conference, short sleeve shirts over long sleeve shirts over sleeve shirts. It's coming up on USL All Access.
Let's get back to USL All Access on Sirius XM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We're back here on USL All Access on this Tuesday night. How about we take a look at the Western Conference, who once again get shafted out of the open. Dev, let's start with Las Vegas, who got shafted in a different way, and this comes with an apology from me. 1-1 draw against Orange County. That secures a playoff berth. I can say that now. One loss in their last 19 games, an 11-game unbeaten run, now a 7-game unbeaten run. Corey Bennett is the leading scorer in the Western Conference as a Baker's dozen this season. You know, Arteaga 16, Harris 17, Marcanic up to 29. The Eastern Conference has sort of gotten a lot of the praise there. The West has been a little lower scoring, and Corey's been the guy. There was a result with Tulsa losing to El Paso, which, truth of the matter, I gave very little probability to, that affected the playoff potential of the Las Vegas game. Never in my career have I been as embarrassed as to find out after the final whistle that a draw was enough to put Vegas into the postseason, and I was unaware.
Oh, this is the apology.
This is the apology.
I didn't know you were capable of such a thing.
It's true. We all missed it from our perspective on the broadcast side. Ultimately, that robbed. Frankly, it changes the whole game. Certainly, I would have been calling the game differently, knowing the draw was enough. And for Las Vegas, 7 just mercilessly bad years. Well, 6. Really 5, when Alda had them pointing in the right direction for a minute.
You just almost halved yourself.
Right. 5 horrific years, 1 year with hope, and then this.
Yeah.
What an amazing season. Dennis and the ownership group and the sporting director there have done an amazing job. I hope that they stick around a while and actually build it. You coach this well and turn a team around this fast, and you have a different discussion. But my apologies to the Lights and their fans. That one, I very rarely felt that stung after a broadcast, but apologies. Dev, thoughts on Vegas?
I will continue to say the same thing that I've said for the past couple of weeks. I thought they were a top 4 squad. As we're talking, in second place. There's certainly still a lot of games left and movement to be had atop the Western Conference, because much like the East, outside of New Mexico, who have locked themselves in at that number 1 spot, which is also an interesting place to be in. We'll get there in a second. Memphis can jump back in there. Certainly Colorado Springs and SAC will have a say, but Indy, I said in the East, when playing well, and certainly even still getting into the postseason, is a dark horse for me. I don't know if it's even fair to call Vegas a dark horse anymore. I don't think it's fair to them. I don't think it's fair to the body of work. You can't be in second place in the Western Conference and say, oh, watch out for this team. This could happen.
Did we say last year at this time that Charleston was a dark horse, or did we say they were legit?
I never would have. The words of me calling them a dark horse last year probably never would have happened. I'm not saying that discussion didn't take place.
Yeah,
I respected them too much.
The only reason I say that is Vegas has had a similar, it's not quite the same, but year-over-year turnaround, not that far off, right? They went from dead last into second, and I think it took me a while. I think Ben Pierman gave them an air of belief. Lee Cohen gave them an air of belief. Guys started performing at a level. You go out and you know, at this point, I don't know that we were calling them a dark horse anymore either. But I think the turnarounds are eerily similar. We just didn't know the names in Vegas as well.
Certainly when it comes to the names, because the way that they compiled that roster is, to me, one of the more impressive builds I've seen, and not just in a first year. I mean, overall, right?
They built it in February.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take the circumstances into it, the late nature of it all, the way that they, when Dennis was obviously hired, Dennis Sanchez, the head coach, but we can't call them a dark horse anymore. And again, I want to be clear, this isn't about me and tooting my own horn and the fact that I've been on them for so long. I'm just saying that it was like, watch out for this team, watch out for this team. You can't watch out for them anymore because they're in second, right?
They're here.
So now, here's the question. Here's a better one. We can't consider them a dark horse anymore. I know where my mind is when it comes to this. Mike, in your mind, are the Las Vegas Lights capable of making a title run?
They're capable of going to the final.
Well, that's a title run.
No, I don't think they're capable of winning the championship.
Okay. Then
I think they're capable of winning the West. I do not think
you're more, as I am, you're more concerned about them having to face off against a Charleston or a Louisville, which we both agree are the two best teams in the East. Here's a better question. Percentage-wise, odds, however you want to say it, do you think the Las Vegas Lights finish in a top 4 spot, 1, and 2, are they now the second favorite to make the Western Conference final behind New Mexico? That's based upon seeding. So
not 97% they'll finish top 4, 50% that they get to the conference final.
And your biggest opponent around them that you would be scared for them to play would be whom? Obviously, it's hard because of seeding.
They aren't playing well, but Sacramento.
You think it's Sac still?
They would see them likely in the 2-3 game, and I just that's a team that knows playoffs. Las Vegas does not have look. There's
knockout
Asante,
games. And
right?
knockout games.
But Asante also didn't have a great record in playoff games. You can look at a number of guys.
Does he have any record in playoff games?
Not a whole hell of a lot. Some guys that did it in Next Pro or League One. This is not Next Pro, and this is not League One. Sacramento on the road, actually, I think is a better fit than Sacramento at home right now for a knockout game.
Just so that we're clear, and I recognize that this is college, but I think it is relevant given that you've been through it. JC Ngondo and the NCAA run with UNC Greensboro.
Sean Smart, right?
Sean Smart, national title winner at Clemson last year. Valentin Noel, one of the best players in college in 2021. Hit College Cup twice. There is something to be said there. And maybe it's not the same competition, but from personal experience, going through a cup run is going through a cup run, right?
Yep.
Like you can't relate 12 and 22, but you can relate 22 and 24 because the difference in quality, while maybe it has come up, the standards are still there and it's fresh in your memory. So,
meanwhile, Sacramento have backed their way into the playoffs. 2-1 loss to San Antonio on the road. They led in the 4th minute. It was Kieran Phillips. He's now got 6 goal contributions in the last 6 games. Manly equalizes out of halftime. Timmer an own goal late. They have now lost 20 points from a leading position, right? We mentioned that earlier, second only to Miami. And yet here's Sacramento in the top 3 in the West and clinching a playoff position. So interesting to say the least. San Antonio, first win of the year, trailing at half, 10 games, first time winning, conceding first in 18 games. Dev, 30 seconds.
Had a nice little exchange with Alan Marcina. The belief is there. This was before the game. They're gonna go and do it. They're gonna get on a run. You've been confident about them. I've maintained that I felt like I liked Tulsa better. Well, here we are, Mike. Our horses in a dead heat, 34 and 34, 9th and 10th, quality result. I'm with you on the cup run when it comes to sack. I think they've got the capability. Their mind is all over the place, and so are their performances. Thought they were very sloppy throughout the game, a ton of unforced errors and giveaways, and this team is so up and down right now. I don't know what to make of them after the brilliance that was New Mexico United and then this flat flop against San Antonio.
Yep. All right. Speaking of Tulsa, 1-0 loss to El Paso in Oklahoma. Tulsa misses the chance to jump into 7th with a win. El Paso 8 back 4 to play. They're still dead. All right. Hi.
Quick hypothetical for you, just because I know your respect for Wilma Cabrera. I share the same sentiments. If El Paso Locomotive, who are now 3 unbeaten, they've gone 2-1-2 in their last 5. Mike, if they win the next 4 games, they finish on 40 points. Would 40 points get them into the playoffs?
Typically it does.
Given the mess that is the West.
It would. In theory, it would.
You think 40 gets them in?
I think 40 should be enough. It's going to be right around 40 to 42. But the way it's trending, because it's the Great Western pillow fight, no one wants a playoff spot. Dev, 6 teams within 3 points of one another. Monterey Bay and San Antonio both get results. Both hanging in for a playoff spot. Phoenix, Tulsa both lose. Orange County draws, which keeps them in 8th. Monterey Bay had not scored in 557 minutes. But they beat Phoenix 2-1, and they stay alive. 3 back with 3 to go. 3 points from 7th and 8th.
What was Rocco Rios Novo doing in goal?
He was 6 feet tall.
Oh, my God. That is
stilts.
one of the worst goals I've ever seen given up in the history of the championship.
That one was rough.
So bad.
Phoenix dominated XG by a margin of about 7 times, and they still lost the game.
The bottom of the Western Conference is a marathon that someone didn't train for and is currently at mile 20 on their hands and knees trying to crawl across the line. So bad.
Phoenix 3-game losing streak for the first time since 2022. Meanwhile, Memphis and Oakland 1-1 draw. Bruno Lapa, 11th of the year, 4th minute. Camden Riley equalizes 36. Oakland now 5 winless, their longest of the year. When we come back, we take a look at some of the results in the Eastern Conference. Get caught up with the games of the upcoming weekend. It's next on USL All Access.
Giving insight to all the biggest moments in Championship and League One. This is USL All Access on Sirius XM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We're back on USL All Access, where we flip the West and the East. We're talking about the East now, baby. With Devon Kerr, Mike Watts. Dev, let's chat about some results of the last week that made an impact on the playoff race. Let's start with Loudoun. Did they just seal their playoff place with a win over Hartford 2-0 on the weekend? Loudoun hosting Indy. As we speak right now, it concludes them having the game in hand on Pittsburgh. If they win that game, 7 clear. This show's pre-recorded. I'll admit it. This show is live-ish. This show is live to tape. I don't know how the game is going against Indy.
You were on a heater. You were going, you're like, yeah, this show's pre-recorded.
This show is not real.
If we didn't have ridiculous travel and have overindulged in the amount of games that we call and didn't have our wives,
that's not the only
and I
thing.
Didn't have the kids, and you didn't have the dogs.
That's not the only thing we're indulging with tonight.
Oh my God, dude.
Anyway, where's Loudoun stand?
I've said much like the Vegas conversation, I believe in them, man. I was talking to Ryan Martin yesterday, would be Monday. There we go. I had to make sure. He's got a lot of belief in this team. He feels like their form has turned in the right direction, specifically in the quality of play. Zach Ryan up top has gained a lot of confidence back in the 9. I've liked him. I've told you since he's come into the league, and watching him, he just feels like he's gotten out of that little bit of a slump. I would agree with Ryan Martin on that. They've got a rough stretch too. Not only are they hosting Indy right now, they then have to go to Rhode Island, host Pittsburgh, and then at the Charleston Battery. Dear Lord, is that a crazy closing schedule?
They will not be favored in any of the last 3 games.
They will get into the playoffs.
Fair enough.
I tell you, the biggest game that concerns me is the Rhode Island game.
Yeah.
Because they have to travel there and how well Rhode Island's playing, in my mind.
If you draw Pittsburgh and you're 7 points clear, if they handle Indy tonight, and that's a big ask, that's probably enough on its own.
I will go out on a limb. Assuming they get a result tonight against Indy. Assuming. And I mean a draw or a win. If they get a result tonight against Indy, the game against the Battery will not mean anything. How's that?
There you go.
That's the belief.
There you go. Elsewhere, Pittsburgh managed to handle the free square and murder Miami 4-0. Rhode Island 3.
Just go with it. You're doing great. I don't need to get involved.
Okay. Rhode Island 3, Tampa Bay 1. Aravo and Fuson and Williams all score. Arteaga made it 2-1 at a point. Arteaga's 16th of the year. Rhode Island's won their last 3. Fuson 6 goals, 9 dimes this year. Has had an incredible season.
Dude, 2 goals, 3 assists in his last 3 games.
Yeah, I'm just gonna,
he's the assist leader right now.
Yep, I'm just gonna say this. I'm grading Tampa on a curve the rest of the year. Just get to the playoffs. Just get through the next 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I'm grading everything on a curve. They don't know what they're going home
prior to the first hurricane, and now they're having to deal with 2.
Yep.
Speaking of curves, I want to talk to you about assists here for a second. Not the fact that Noah Fuson is the assist leader at 9. Where did all the playmakers go?
Well, you only need 1 golden playmaker.
God. Noah Fuson. I don't mean that as a disrespect to him, but I'm looking at everybody else around him. Jorge Hernandez. Okay, we can have that conversation. But then it's Jack Gurr. Then it's Memo Diaz. Then it's Aiden Stanley. Adrian Perez, by the way, who basically had to take off half of the season.
Yep.
He has 6 assists to his name. I'm pretty sure 5 were in the first 5 games of the year. J.J. Williams below him. Dawson McCartney. Aiden McFadden. Where are the 10s in this league? Oh, my God. Sorry. What were we talking about?
No, very fair point. That's a lot of outside backs. For people who don't know, you just named about 5 outside backs, a striker, an 8. Did I miss anything?
No, you're on point.
We're a crossing league, baby.
J.J. Williams, who I've always respected in the 9, has 6 assists.
Dish into Dequa. It's the way God intended.
Next. Thank you.
North Carolina 3-2 win over Birmingham. This one makes a big difference. Birmingham continues to struggle. North Carolina hangs in by the playoff line. NCFC have actually alternated wins and losses the last 6 games. First road win in 2 months, only their 3rd of the year. They're only 3 points behind Birmingham, and they've got a game in hand. Ezra Armstrong scores twice in this game. Enzo Martinez pulled one back. Olex Anderson, ultimately, it's the winner. Rita Zahir scores for Birmingham in the 89th and makes a game of it late. High efficiency, low opportunity game. Less than 2 expected goals. It finishes 3-2 to North Carolina. How much of a chance does North Carolina have to get into this thing?
None. They're done. They've been done.
Birmingham, how much of a case do you have that they can get out of the first round should they, in fact, make it?
I have there's no confidence in them whatsoever. It's shattering to me. There's so much talent within that organization. And once again, every single year we're having a conversation about what do they look like? What's the next step for them? Like the most confident I've ever been in that team was last year in their run to the quarterfinal of the Open Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended in June, July. And ever since then, it's back to what it's been since their inception in 2019. I have a question for you about their inception in 2019, but we'll do it in the next segment.
I'm ready to be incepted. All right, when we come back, games to watch around the championship. Really, really busy midweek, and also pretty busy weekend as well. It's coming up on USL All Access.
You're listening to USL All Access on Sirius XM FC. Here are your hosts, Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
We're back on USL All Access. Mike Watts, Devon Kerr. Let's talk about games coming up this weekend. Tonight. I already mentioned it, Loudoun Indy. Highest scoring game in league history. This game is pre-recorded. We have no idea how
Your
it ended.
segues tonight are delightful. Keep going.
Mm-hmm. On Wednesday, 5 games, Sacramento, Monterey, Orange County, and Colorado Springs has some intrigue. El Paso and San Antonio, North Carolina and Tulsa is live en Espanol on TUDN. And then there's New Mexico, Phoenix. All 5 games have an impact on the playoffs. Dev, New Mexico, Phoenix, that one titillates you, I'm sure.
I'm saying it right now that New Mexico Phoenix game is the biggest game in the history of their rivalry. I know fans may not agree with it. I don't care. And here's why. Because New Mexico, much like what has gone on in the Eastern Conference for the Charleston Battery, New Mexico, quote unquote, have nothing to play for. They can't go any higher. They can't win the Supporter Shield, and they can't relinquish the #1 spot in the West. This is all about mentally staying locked in, coming off of that crap loss, I might add, against the Sacramento Republic, gaining momentum into the title run for what is still one of the best teams in the USL Championship, and a Phoenix Rising team that I cannot believe what I saw on the weekend, still having a chance somehow to get a postseason berth. There has not been a bigger game.
New Mexico shanking their rival would be intriguing. I would say there's some Open Cup games, but in the league, I would agree with you. No? All right. Well, then you're wrong. All right. See, that's the debate you expect on this show. Dev, on Saturday, there's 8 games. It starts early, Detroit and Indy, 4 p.m. That's probably going to decide whether Indy has any chance of getting into the top 4. Pittsburgh, Charleston, Hartford, North Carolina is a battle right at the line. Louisville will receive the Players' Shield when they host Tampa Bay. Colorado Springs will take on San Antonio. We're trying to get in. Memphis and Sacramento, probably not a lot of seeding implications there, but both playoff teams. Tulsa hosting New Mexico. They need that one. Oakland hosting Phoenix. Your favorite Saturday game is?
Ironically, it's actually the Memphis Sac game because I disagree with you. I think if Sac wins this game, they seal their fate in the top 4.
Okay.
I don't know where in the top 4, but also for Memphis to retain their relevance for a home playoff squad, which to me they need in order to make a run, they have to win the game. It's a must-win between the two. Yes, it's towards the top, but with 4 games remaining and 3 for Memphis, I think it's the most important game on the weekend for me.
For me, it's Hartford, North Carolina, because I think it's an elimination game. It's not literally going to eliminate anybody, but I think if there's a winner in that game, the other one's probably dead.
Figuratively, you're wrong.
Okay. On Sunday, 2 games. Rhode Island, Loudoun, Birmingham, Las Vegas. I think I know your favorite.
Do you? Pick it for me.
Rhode Island, Loudoun.
Just making sure. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
100%.
Oh.
It's like you know me. It's like we
Yeah.
spend time together.
Do you learn anything from Loudoun if they win that game, or do you know what you need to know already?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I don't know what I need to know in the sense of them being able to get a result regularly on the road, which they're going to have to do in the postseason. I remember they beat the Rowdies in mid-August. That was kind of the turn for the Rowdies where it started to go south. Doesn't take away from the quality of win. Yeah, I probably need to see a little bit more out of them. The resilience on the road. Took me a second to get there. How about you?
We'll find out. Rhode Island's a tough place to go, but the reality is if you're going to win a playoff game, this is probably the closest marker you have.
Perfect. Here's my question for you. This is the best segue you're going to hear all night. Mike, is Rhode Island the best expansion team we've ever seen?
Ooh. No, because Louisville made a conference final, El Paso.
Let me rephrase
close.
that. Is it the best expansion team since we've been branded the USL Championship, which was 2018?
Probably. I mean, New Mexico made
New
the Open
Mexico's
Cup
in there.
run,
Birmingham's in there.
but they finished like
Open Cup has
8th.
nothing to do with league play.
Right. No, I agree. That's why I'm saying Rhode Island go above them.
Detroit's going to have an argument. The Rowdies would have an argument.
No, I don't think
To
the
me,
Rowdies
it's the
do.
best.
I don't think the Rowdies do.
Does the rest of the season matter?
Yeah.
No. Obviously, it matters. I mean, there's 3 games left. Does where they finish in the table matter?
Yes, it does.
Got it.
And also, if they hadn't started 10 games without knowing how to win, we'd be having a different conversation about Rhode Island.
37 draws later. I'm with you. Okay.
Indeed. Before we go, USL Arkansas has a name, Ozark United FC. The kits are coming from Charlie, which means they're lit. Dev, what do you think of the logo?
Oh, I just want one so bad. I want one of those jerseys. I like the color scheme. It's a little bit Vermont greenish to me, but I like it.
Amen.
I like it.
They're based in Rogers, Arkansas. Vital to mention, you might go, where's the money in all of Arkansas? That is right next to Bentonville, which is home to Walmart.
Wally World. Absolutely. Gotta love the Waltons.
That's the nicest small airport in America, and it's Walmart International Airport. It's gorgeous.
Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, I guess.
Great. You can have one team for a playoff run, not any of the top two currently. Who is it?
In either team? In either
conference? Yeah,
Colorado Springs.
Oh, you're on the train.
Yeah.
You're on the train. Love it.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Dev, did you learn anything in this show?
Not really.
Okay. To everyone in Tampa, stay safe. We have a ton of friends there, and even if you're not our friend, foe, doesn't matter. Like, listen. Just listen to local authorities. Be safe. For Devin, Emmett, Mike, we'll talk to you again next Tuesday night. Enjoy the week, everybody. So long.
This is USL All Access. If you missed any portion of the program, listen back anytime on the SXM app.